A woman with no friends, the silent strength of solitude, they say a woman with no friends must be broken. But what they don't see is that silence is where warriors are forged. She walks alone, not because she's unworthy of company, but because she's been called to a path too sacred for the crowd. While others are busy blending in, she's been chosen to stand apart. In the quiet, she's not withering, she's awakening. Every unanswered call, every ignored message, every lonely night wasn't abandonment, it was alignment. Because sometimes to hear your purpose clearly, you've got to mute the noise of the world. This isn't the story of a lonely woman. This is the rise of a force the world never saw coming. Isolation isn't a curse, it's the incubator of divine elevation. They don't teach this in school, and the world rarely celebrates it, but isolation, true, sacred, stretching solitude isn't a punishment, it's preparation. Most people fear being alone because they confuse silence with insignificance, but the woman who walks through isolation and doesn't flinch is the one who understands that elevation rarely happens in the spotlight. It happens in the shadows. It happens when the phone stops ringing, when the invitations stop coming, when familiar faces start fading. And instead of chasing them, she stays planted. Because deep down she knows this isn't rejection, it's redirection. This is where God does his best work, away from the noise, beyond the chatter, far from applause. See, the woman with no friends isn't pitied in heaven, she's positioned, she's the one being pruned, not punished. Because the higher the calling, the deeper the cutting, and in that isolation, she's being stripped of every crutch, every false comfort, every unnecessary voice, so she can finally hear the only voice that matters. The voice of purpose, the voice of destiny, the voice that says you weren't made for the crowd, you were made to shift the crowd. While others were being distracted by connection, she was being sharpened by consecration. She wasn't scrolling, she was studying, she wasn't mingling, she was mastering, and let me tell you, there is power in the person who learns how to sit in silence and not lose their mind. That's strength. That's grit, that's divine preparation. The eagle doesn't fly in flocks, it soars solo, and this woman, she's not bitter, she's not broken, she's becoming, because every moment alone taught her something company could never reveal. She discovered the richness of her own voice. She uncovered ideas that were buried beneath the noise. She started to see herself, not through the eyes of friends or followers, but through the lens of heaven. And that's dangerous because a woman who finds her identity in isolation is a woman who can't be manipulated in the crowd. You can't impress her with status. You can't sway her with opinion. She's anchored, grounded, rooted in something eternal, and when she comes out of that season, she doesn't come out needy, she comes out anointed. Too many people want the crown without the cave, but the cave is where kings are made and queens are crowned. Look at every great movement, every powerful leader, every world shifter. Before they were known, they were alone. Before they were celebrated, they were separated, because separation is the signal that elevation is coming. You don't climb mountains with a crowd. You climb with grit, sweat, and silence. That's where she is. That's what she's doing. And even though the world may label her as lonely, what they don't understand is that solitude is her sanctuary. She doesn't despise the quiet. It's where she hears God the loudest. It's where strategy drops. It's where healing happens. It's where old wounds finally close and new strength begins to grow. This woman isn't missing out, she's being marked. She's being set apart. She's becoming the kind of force that doesn't beg for access because she is the door. And here's the truth, not everyone can go where she's going. That's why people fell off. That's why circles closed. That's why invitations stopped. It's not a sign that she's behind. It's confirmation that she's ahead, because purpose has a price, and sometimes that price is loneliness. But if you pay it, what you gain on the other side will never leave you empty. She's learning to love her own company, to build without applause, to pray without witnesses, to grow without affirmation. And when she finally reemerges, she won't need to introduce herself. Her fruit will speak. Her work will echo. Her presence will carry a weight that no surface connection could ever create, because isolation wasn't her downfall. It was her divine setup. So don't feel sorry for her. Don't mistake her stillness for stagnation. Don't confuse her quiet for weakness. She's in training. She's in transformation. She's in the presence of the one who's molding her into something uncommon. And when you see her again, she won't look like the woman who walked in. She'll look like the woman who was forged in fire, because she dared to embrace the season everyone else runs from. She dared to say, if I have to walk alone to walk in purpose, then so be it. That's power. That's focus. That's favor. That's what happens when you stop seeing isolation as a curse and start recognizing it as the incubator of divine elevation. She didn't lose friends. She shed distractions to sharpen her focus. People love to say she lost all her friends. As if that's a tragedy, as if a life trimmed of excess is a life less valuable. But the truth is, she didn't lose anyone. She let go of what no longer aligned. She didn't wake up bitter. She woke up better. There's a point in every purpose-driven woman's life when the cost of carrying dead weight becomes too expensive, when loyalty to the wrong people starts threatening loyalty to your calling, and when that moment came, she didn't cry, she cut. Not out of hate, but out of clarity, because she finally saw it. Some connections were camouflage, some conversations were codependent, some people were never friends, they were familiar distractions dressed in convenience. And while the world talks about friendship like it's the highest currency, she realized that peace, focus, and alignment are worth far more than proximity. You can't take everyone with you. Not because they are bad, but because where you're going requires a different version of you. One they're not willing to meet, and you can't afford to delay. She didn't lose friends, she shed distractions. She traded noise for vision, she chose destiny over dinner invites, and in doing so, she found what too many people miss. Focus isn't built in community, it's forged in the fire of separation. You see, distraction doesn't always look like disaster. Sometimes it wears a smile, sends memes, and texts you good, once a week, but beneath the surface, it keeps you in cycles, talking about dreams instead of building them, sharing pain instead of healing it, staying busy instead of being bold. And she was done with that, done with conversations that went in circles, done with people who cheered for her potential but disappeared during her process, done with the kind of comfort that numbed her from the discomfort of growth. Because here's what no one wants to admit. Most friendships aren't rooted in growth. They're rooted in agreement. And the moment you evolve, the moment you step out of that agreed-upon identity, you become a threat to the bond. That's when the energy shifts. That's when the support fades. That's when the silence gets loud. And that's when you have to decide, do I shrink to stay loved, or do I expand and let the love change? She chose expansion. She chose purpose. She chose to sharpen her focus so she could stop playing small. It's not that she's antisocial, it's that she's pro-destiny. She stopped answering calls that drained her. She stopped explaining herself to people committed to misunderstanding her. She stopped trying to fix broken dynamics that were never built on truth to begin with. Because once you've seen where you're going, you can't keep entertaining what keeps you stuck. Every friend who couldn't handle her boundaries was revealing themselves, not being taken from her. Every ghosted conversation was grace. Every exit it was evidence that elevation was near, and rather than mourning what left, she started thanking God for the clarity that came with the clearing. Sometimes focus isn't found by addition, it's unlocked by subtraction. She's lighter now, sharper, clearer, the mental fog is gone, and the emotional chaos has been replaced by purpose and discipline. That's what shedding distractions does. It reclaims your time, reorders your priorities, and reintroduces you to the version of yourself that doesn't need approval to move forward. And let's be real, this isn't about being cold or cruel. This is about being called. It's about stewardship, because when you're carrying a vision this big, you don't have the luxury of divided energy. You can't keep pausing your purpose to soothe someone's insecurity. You can't keep delaying your assignment because someone takes your silence personal. She learned that focus costs, but the payoff is freedom, the kind of freedom that lets you build without looking back. The kind of freedom that attracts divine connections instead of draining attachments, and that's the difference. Friends hold your hand, but aligned people hold you accountable. She didn't need more friends. She needed mirrors, she needed mentors, she needed momentum, and once she stopped clinging to who was comfortable, she made room for what was consecrated. Now her calendar is clearer, but her mind is sharper. Her phone is quieter, but her soul is louder, and in the stillness she's discovering what friendship was never meant to replace: her own power. She doesn't wait for others to validate her next move. She doesn't measure her worth by how many people check in, because she's checked in with herself. She's done the work. She's shed the layers, and now her focus is a weapon. She's not moved by emotion. She's guided by assignment, and every person she let go of. That was a seed that birthed more clarity, more strength, more conviction. She didn't lose anything. She aligned everything, and now she moves like a woman who knows. Every distraction that left was a doorway to deeper focus. Every detour she avoided was protection, and every friend who faded wasn't her loss. It was her liberation. When no one claps, she learns to dance to the rhythm of her own purpose. There comes a moment in every woman's journey where the applause dies down, the cheers go silent, and the seats that were once full of validation suddenly go empty. And that's when it happens, that sacred, defining moment where she decides she doesn't need an audience to be excellent. When no one claps, she doesn't stop dancing. She learns to dance to the rhythm of her own purpose. Because true power isn't found in recognition, it's revealed in resilience. While others wait for permission to shine, she gave herself the license to move forward without it. She understood that applause is temporary, but assignment is eternal. That when the world forgets to celebrate you, it's not a sign to shrink, it's a cue to dig deeper. She started showing up not because someone was watching, but because she knew what she was becoming, the rhythm she dances to now. It's not made of praise, it's made of promise. It's the beat of discipline, the tempo of trust, the hum of unshakable vision, and when no one claps, she doesn't falter, she rises, because she's not chasing fans, she's walking in faith. See, the woman who keeps moving without recognition is dangerous. She's not motivated by likes. She's driven by legacy. She's not looking for confirmation. She is confirmation. Every step she takes without applause builds something deeper: grit, character, alignment, and divine confidence. She's no longer addicted to feedback. She's free from needing approval, and that kind of freedom, that's what turns women into pioneers, into builders, into world changers, because once she stops needing noise, she starts making impact. She's learned that sometimes the greatest achievements happen behind the scenes, when nobody sees you writing the book, building the business, healing from the trauma, praying through the night, grinding in silence. And while they scroll past her, she stays in motion. While they overlook her, she overcomes, because purpose doesn't pause just because people don't notice. She knows now that some of the most sacred victories will never be seen, but they will be felt. They will echo in the legacy she leaves, in the people she helps, in the lives she lifts, whether the world claps or not. Clapping is nice, but calling is necessary. She's stopped waiting for celebration and started chasing clarity. She no longer adjusts her pace based on who's watching. She moves on cue from something higher, deeper, and unshakably divine. Her joy doesn't come from the crowd. It comes from obedience, from alignment. from knowing that she is exactly where she's supposed to be, even if nobody's cheering. And while some people crumble without affirmation, she builds in silence. She's learned to celebrate herself, to look in the mirror and say, "Well done," even when the world says nothing at all. Because she's not building for the now, she's building for next, for what's coming, for what's promised, and that makes her unmovable. There were times, yes, when the silence felt like suffocation, when the lack of support stung like betrayal. When she wondered if the path she chose was worth the solitude it demanded, but in those moments something sacred happened. She became her own source of fire. She discovered the rhythm of inner peace, the melody of divine instruction, the cadence of consistency, and now, even in silence, she dances, not for performance but for purpose, not for attention but for alignment, not for praise but for the pure joy of walking in what she was born to do. Because once you've tasted the power of purpose, no amount of praise can compare. It's not that she's immune to applause, it's that she's no longer dependent on it. Some people only move when they're seen. But she moves when she hears God. She moves when vision calls. She moves when the world is sleeping, because she understands that destiny doesn't run on popularity. It runs on obedience, and the less she needed to be clapped for, the more she started building things that couldn't be ignored. The dream got louder, the work got deeper, the impact got stronger, not because she was hyped, but because she was healed. The lack of applause didn't break her, it built her. It made her roots run deep. It made her foundation solid, it made her unstoppable, because a woman who learns to dance without music is a woman who will never miss her step when the spotlight goes out. She doesn't despise the quiet now. She honors it, she protects it, because in that stillness she found her rhythm, and it wasn't shallow, it wasn't loud, it wasn't performative, it was sacred, authentic, unshakable, and now her life moves to a beat that only heaven could compose. She's no longer dancing for approval, she's dancing for destiny, and that's why she's so powerful. Because even when no one's clapping, she's still creating, still showing up, still pouring out. And when the world finally turns to look, they'll see not a woman waiting to be noticed, but a woman already walking in power, because she didn't need the claps, she just needed her calling. Solitude built in her what applause never could, unshakable vision solitude, often misunderstood, often feared, became the very soil where her roots grew deep and her vision grew clear. While others chased the noise, she embraced the stillness. While they scrambled for attention, she disappeared into development, because she knew something most people forget. Applause might feel good, but it never built anything that lasts. Applause is fleeting, shallow, reactive. It comes and goes with public opinion. But solitude is sacred. Solitude is surgical. Solitude gets beneath the surface and asks hard questions. It peels back the layers of people pleasing, strips away the masks of performance, and dismantles every lie she once believed about who she needed to be loved. And when everything else faded, when the crowd left, when the phone went silent, when the rooms she used to light up suddenly felt cold and unfamiliar, she found something greater than approval. She found clarity. She didn't panic in that silence. She listened, she leaned in, she started seeing things she had missed before, not just about the world, but about herself. She realized that what applause could never build in her, solitude was shaping brick by brick. Confidence, discernment, purpose, direction. She wasn't just becoming stronger, she was becoming sharper, because solitude isn't absence, it's alignment. It's not about being cut off, it's about being called in, called inward, called higher, called into the hidden place where real vision is born. She used to think clarity would come when others believed in her, but she discovered that true vision doesn't come from being seen. It comes from seeing yourself rightly. It comes when the noise dies down, when the distractions are stripped away, when there's nothing left but your thoughts, your spirit, and the whisper of God reminding you why you were created in the first place. That's where her vision was reborn, not in the crowd but in the quiet, not on the stage but in the stillness, and it wasn't a small vision, it was massive, it was heavy, it was the kind of vision that doesn't need a mic or a platform to be real, it just needs a made-up mind. And solitude gave her that, the mind to stay focused, the will to endure, the strength to say no when everything in her wanted to say yes just to feel included. Because when you've seen your future clearly, compromise starts to taste bitter. She stopped entertaining distractions, she stopped explaining her growth, she stopped asking people who couldn't see her calling to validate her direction, and in that silence she didn't shrink, she expanded. They thought she disappeared, they thought she gave up, but she was in the lab. Her spirit was in training, her vision was under construction, and her discipline was being forged like steel. She was sketching blueprints while they were seeking attention. She was writing visions while they were watching trends, because she knew applause may echo for a moment, but vision creates movements that last for generations, and that's what solitude gave her, long-range focus. Not just excitement for the next opportunity, but a burden for the next decade. She began to see beyond likes and recognition, beyond quick wins and instant gratification. She saw legacy, she saw systems, she saw global impact, and while others sprinted to be seen, she slowed down to be sent. She wasn't building to be popular, she was preparing to be effective. The beauty of solitude is that it teaches you to be the architect of your own future. It forces you to stop outsourcing your dream to other people's approval. It makes you responsible for your own development, and that's exactly what happened to her. She stopped blaming the world for not opening doors. She built her own, she stopped waiting for a team and became her own support. She invested in herself, studied her craft, mastered her mindset, strengthened her spirit. And in doing so, she discovered that the applause she once thought she needed was actually a distraction from the depth she was called to reach. There's something unmatched about a woman who has faced silence and come out stronger. A woman who has walked through the valley of invisibility and refused to let it shrink her sense of value. A woman who has realized that solitude was not a punishment, but a promotion in disguise. Now, when she walks into a room, it's not her voice that commands attention. It's her vision. It's not her outfit, her followers, or her resume. It's the quiet authority of someone who has done the inner work. And that kind of presence, that can't be manufactured, that can't be taught. That's earned in private. That's the power of solitude. It doesn't make you flashy. It makes you fortified. It makes you immune to gossip, unbothered by competition, and untouched by insecurity. Because when you know what you carry, you stop trying to convince people to clap. You stop explaining your worth. You stop watering yourself down just to be palatable. She's not interested in being popular anymore. She's interested in being productive. Solitude taught her that. It taught her to sit with the hard questions, to break the cycles, to unlearn the lies, and to rebuild her identity from the inside out. She no longer moves for validation. She moves for vision, and that has changed everything. And now, even if the applause comes, she doesn't depend on it. She smiles at it, maybe even appreciates it. But she doesn't need it, because applause didn't build her. Applause didn't anoint her. Applause didn't walk her through the nights when no one believed. It was the silence, the solitude, the sacred space where she met herself and her Creator and got clear on why she's here. That clarity became her compass, that vision became her anchor, and now, whether the room is full or empty, she shows up the same. She doesn't dance for noise. She moves by divine rhythm. She doesn't chase crowds. She chases calling. And when they ask her how she stayed so focused, how she got so grounded, how she built what she did without all the bells and whistles, she'll smile and say, "Solitude built in me what applause never could," because at the end of the day, it wasn't about being seen. It was about seeing clearly, and now that she does, there's no stopping her. She became untouchable, not because she fought louder, but because she healed deeper. She didn't rise by swinging louder fists or demanding attention. She became untouchable because she chose a different battleground, the battlefield within. While others fought for visibility, for revenge, for validation, she fought for healing. And in that sacred, often lonely war with her own pain, her own patterns, her own shadows, she discovered something that most people run from: wholeness, the kind of wholeness that doesn't shake when people leave, the kind of strength that doesn't break when life disappoints, the kind of power that doesn't roar, it radiates, because true power doesn't come from noise, it comes from depth, from the quiet, grueling work of rebuilding yourself from the inside out. She became untouchable not because she never got hurt, but because she stopped allowing her wounds to become walls. She faced them, sat with them, dug into the ache until she found the root, and then pulled it out with tears, truth, and tenacity. That's why she's so dangerous now, because nothing outside her can shake what she's already conquered within. The world teaches women to become strong by becoming hard, to armor up, to never cry, to outwork the pain. But she learned a deeper truth. Healing doesn't make you soft, it makes you secure. It makes you selective. It makes you sovereign over your own spirit. She no longer reacts from unhealed places. She doesn't fight battles that don't match her assignment. She's not triggered by small talk, passive aggression, or disrespect that used to unravel her. Why? Because she already made peace with the parts of herself that used to be desperate for validation. She no longer needs closure from people who left her broken. She no longer needs apologies from those who couldn't see her worth. Healing gave her that, and not just surface healing, the real kind, the kind that makes you uncomfortable before it makes you free, the kind that strips your ego and silences your pride and humbles your need to always be right. She faced herself, and in doing so, she took back power she didn't even know she had handed away. She doesn't walk into rooms needing to prove anything. She is the proof that peace is possible, that growth is real, that you can survive betrayal, disappointment, rejection, and still rise with your softness intact and your soul on fire. She doesn't argue anymore. She doesn't chase closure. She lets silence speak where explanations used to exhaust her, because healed women don't beg to be understood. They bless, release, and move. She doesn't compete with brokenness. She honors her own boundaries. She doesn't clap back. She calls herself higher. That's what makes her untouchable. Not pride, not arrogance, but peace. The unshakable, immovable kind that doesn't waver just because the room shifts or the energy turns cold. She doesn't match energy, she commands it. And the reason she can do that now is because healing made her whole, and wholeness is not loud. Wholeness is calm, certain, centered. It speaks through presence, not performance. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them walk away. She's no longer controlled by what she can't control. That's what real healing does. It unhooks you from the emotional roller coaster of other people's behavior. It roots you so deeply in identity that you stop looking outward for what can only be resolved inward. She doesn't take things personally now because she understands. What people project is about them, not her. And even when the pain does come, as it still sometimes does, she meets it with wisdom, not panic, with prayer, not performance, with reflection, not retaliation. That's the depth she walks in now, not because life got easier, but because she got deeper. She grew past needing to be the loudest voice in the room. She's no longer a woman driven by reaction. She's anchored in revelation. And from that place, her power flows not from her volume, but from her vibration. A healed woman is a quiet storm, unpredictable, undeniable, and full of force that doesn't need to shout to shift the atmosphere. People ask her how she became so calm, so confident, so secure, and the answer is never instant. It came through nights where tears were her only company, through prayers that felt unanswered, through forgiveness that had to be chosen over and over again, even when it wasn't deserved. Through moments where she had to walk away with shaking hands and a bleeding heart, but still say, "This is not where I shrink, this is where I heal." She had to stop trying to prove her worth and start embodying it. To stop looking for love in wounded places, to stop rescuing people who were drowning in their own denial, and in doing so, she became her own rescue, her own sanctuary, her own source of peace, and that changed everything. She stopped being affected by temporary chaos because she had tapped into eternal calm. She stopped breaking under pressure because her roots weren't shallow anymore. They were deep, tested, and trained in solitude. Now, she doesn't flex her healed heart for applause. She simply lives from it. She forgives faster, lets go sooner, moves on quieter, because the things that once stole her sleep now can't touch her soul. She doesn't live for retribution. She lives for restoration, and that's a different kind of power. That's the kind of power that doesn't just elevate you, it transforms everyone around you, because healed women don't just grow, they shift atmospheres. They disrupt cycles. They model peace in a world addicted to chaos. She doesn't need to fight battles that healing already won. She doesn't need to raise her voice when her presence speaks volumes. She doesn't need to prove she's okay. She is. Fully, authentically, quietly, unapologetically, she became untouchable, not because she hardened her heart, but because she opened it. She let it break, let it bleed, let it be reformed, reshaped, and revived by grace. And now she wears her healing like armor, not to shield her from love, but to protect her peace, and that peace, it's her superpower, the kind of peace that confuses people, that makes her unshakable when storms come, that keeps her grounded when others spiral, that draws others in, not because she's trying to be seen, but because she is light. She carries a healed energy, and that energy cannot be touched, manipulated, or destroyed. Because it was forged in fire and refined in solitude, she's not untouchable because she's above pain. She's untouchable because pain no longer defines her. She made peace with her past, mastered her emotions, chose love over bitterness, and that, more than anything else, is what makes her unstoppable. Not her noise, not her fight, but the deep, quiet, revolutionary power of a woman who healed.